Today, I wanted to tell you a story about a man called Macbeth. Now, this Macbeth, he was the meanest son of a bitch you've ever seen. Split a man wide open with his sword once, cut him from knave to chops. But that didn't make him a bad man, mind you. In fact, he was the greatest general in the service of Duncan, King of Scotland. Macbeth and his best friend Banquo were coming back from winning some battles for King Duncan when they ran into these three nasty ladies, these weird witchy sisters. Banquo said they would have looked like women if it weren't for the beards they were growing. These weird sisters, they greeted Macbeth. All hail Macbeth, Thane of Glamis. This he was. All hail Macbeth, Thane of Cawdor. This he was not. All hail Macbeth, King hereafter. Now, as we've discussed, Macbeth was decidedly not the King of Scotland. That was his dear friend and relation, Duncan. Macbeth is reasonably suspicious of these strange women he's basically met on the side of the road, and despite them promising him unexpected riches and power, and Banquo's sons the same, both men figure they just aren't going to put too much thought into anything the crazy ladies say. As soon as those weird sisters go, two noblemen show up. They greet Macbeth and tell him King Duncan needs to see him right away. And oh yeah, Duncan's given Macbeth a promotion. He is now the Thane of Cawdor. At this point, you've got to be wondering, how the hell do those crazy ladies know that Macbeth was about to become the Thane of Cawdor? But our man Macbeth is already thinking, how am I going to become the King of Scotland? Our Scotsmen get back to Duncan, and it's all a party. Duncan's army is victorious, Macbeth is the conquering hero, and Duncan's son Malcolm has been named his heir, and is next in line to become king. Macbeth, who a minute ago was just thinking about chopping people up with his sword, now can't get the idea of becoming king out of his head. It's not just Duncan he has to get out of the way to be king now, though. It's Malcolm as well. How could he do this? It would take just the right opportunity. And then Duncan practically hands him that opportunity. The king wants to celebrate, and he wants the party to be at Macbeth's castle. Macbeth has sent a messenger ahead to let his wife, Lady Macbeth, know of the witch's prophecies, and to let her know that Duncan is coming for dinner. Lady Macbeth doesn't waste any time because right away she's thinking, we have to kill Duncan. But she's also thinking that Macbeth is going to chicken out. When everyone arrives at Macbeth's castle, and I mean everyone, Macbeth, Banquo, Banquo's son Fleance, King Duncan and his sons, and a bunch of other noblemen are all there, another big-time Thane and General Macduff is on his way, planning to arrive the next morning. Lady Macbeth is playing the perfect host to the king she's about to kill, but Macbeth is already starting to crack. He's trying to pretend like nothing is happening, even to Banquo, who, you'll recall, knows all about the prophecy. That night, after everyone has gone to sleep, Macbeth decides he can't go through with it. Duncan is his king, his relative, and his guest. Lady Macbeth is prepared for this cowardice, and she tells him that if he doesn't go through with it, his word is worthless. She questions his manhood. If she, as a woman, could do it, surely he, a man who has killed so many in battle, must be able to. And when Macbeth asks what will happen if they fail, Lady Macbeth tells him to screw his courage to the sticking place, because as long as he is courageous, they will not fail. Lady Macbeth gets Duncan's guards drunk, and Macbeth leaves under the cover of darkness to kill his king. He runs into Banquo, and when Banquo questions him about the prophecies, Macbeth claims he has barely given them a thought at all. Macbeth, in one last minute of indecision, hallucinates a dagger floating before him. But when Lady Macbeth rings the bell to signal the guards have passed out, Macbeth leaves to seal Duncan's fate, and his own. Macbeth knew beforehand that he was not okay with all of this, but the immediacy of his guilt and breakdown is still shocking. After he kills the king, he finds himself unable to say amen, as his deed has torn him from God. And in the dark, he swears he hears a voice says that Macbeth will sleep no more. In his fear and panic, Macbeth has forgotten to plant the daggers on the guards, so Lady Macbeth must do it herself, and now they literally both have blood on their hands. She muses that all it will take to cleanse them of their sins is a little water to wash the blood away. But before the sun has come up, they hear a knocking at the door. Macduff has arrived to meet with Duncan. Macbeth tells him that Duncan isn't awake. Technically, this is true, as Macduff finds out moments later when he discovers the king's dead body. The horror. Macbeth rushes off to investigate, as everyone quickly comes to the conclusion that Duncan's tenants are the guilty parties. But surely they must have been put up to it by somebody. They would just have to ask. But Macduff is surprised to hear that Macbeth has already killed them in anger. People are suspicious, but some are suspicious of Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain. Malcolm and Donalbain sense they are in danger one way or the other, so they flee. Macduff leaves quickly as well. Macbeth rises, unchallenged, to the throne of Scotland. Banquo is starting to realize his friend probably killed the king, right around the time that Macbeth is starting to realize that his friend is a good man, and his friend's kid could take the crown according to the witch's prophecy. Would Macbeth have dirtied his hands for Banquo's descendants to have power? Macbeth invites Banquo to a banquet that night, but Banquo is suspicious and says he's going for a ride with his son before that. Macbeth sends murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance, but they lose their nerve about killing a kid. Macbeth pulls the same trick that Lady Macbeth pulled on him and questions their manhood till they agree to do the deed. They try, but they fail and are only able to kill Banquo. Fleance escapes. Macbeth is struggling with the guilt of his actions and the pressure of ruling. He is haunted and not sleeping. He is terrified that someone will kill him to take the crown, just like he did to Duncan. Lady Macbeth is surprised when she suspects that Macbeth has ordered Banquo and young Fleance murdered, but Macbeth tries to protect her by not confirming what he has done. At the banquet that night, the murderers return to tell Macbeth of Banquo's death. They also tell him that Fleance has escaped. The witch's prophecy could still come true. Once again, the lack of sleep, extreme guilt, and fear of the prophecy's fulfillment push Macbeth towards madness as he sees Banquo's ghost sitting in his seat at the table and then stalking him out throughout the night at the banquet. Lady Macbeth apologizes to their guests and quickly takes Macbeth away. But before she can take him away, he realizes that Macduff has not shown up for the banquet either. Macduff is indeed plotting against Macbeth. He is joined with other lords with the intention of raising an army and returning Malcolm, Duncan's son, to the throne. Macbeth is a ruthless and violent leader who is bad for Scotland. Macduff only wants what is best for his country. Macbeth seeks out the three witches, and they reaffirm his power with 3 new prophecies. A floating head appears, and the witches tell Macbeth to beware Macduff. A bloody infant appears, and the witches tell Macbeth no man born of woman can hurt him. A child with a crown and a branch appears, and the witches tell Macbeth that he will reign until Great Burnham Wood marches to Dunsinane. Macbeth was already wary of Macduff, but now he thinks himself safe. All men are born of women, and trees don't just get up and move. But the prophecy about Banquo's descendants becoming king, that still holds true according to the witches. Macbeth is told that Macduff has aligned with Malcolm, and they are coming back to overthrow him. Macbeth is angry he didn't kill Macduff when he had the chance. If Macbeth can't kill Macduff, he will kill anyone close to him. He sends people to murder Macduff's wife and children. Macduff struggles to convince Malcolm to return to Scotland, but in part that's because Malcolm doesn't trust Macduff. Malcolm tests Macduff by asking if he would support him if there was a chance he would be a worse king than Macbeth. Macduff is distraught and says he'd leave Scotland forever before he allowed someone unworthy to rule his homeland. Malcolm is convinced of Macduff's loyalty. Others show up and tell Malcolm the Scottish people would rise up and join him to fight against Macbeth. But they also bring the sad news of the death of Macduff's family. Meanwhile, back at Dunsinane, Macbeth isn't the only one tormented by guilt. Lady Macbeth sleepwalks every night, and worse, she talks in her sleep, confessing her sins to anyone close enough to overhear. She imagines a bloody spot staining her hands, one that she cannot wash away with just a little water. Malcolm and his army are fast approaching. He has reached Burnham Wood. Macbeth is frantically fortifying his castle at Dunsinane, but there are not many left who support him. The lords with Malcolm discuss how the only supporters Macbeth has left stay with him out of fear and not love. Macbeth tells his servant to bring him his armor. He is ready to fight against the odds, since he has nothing to fear until Burnham Wood marches upon Dunsinane, as the witch's prophecy said. He clearly thinks this is impossible. A doctor reports with news of Lady Macbeth's condition. Macbeth is dismissive. He tells the doctor to cure her, as if it were that easy. Meanwhile, back at Burnham Wood, Malcolm's men are cutting large leafy branches from the trees. They mean to hold them in front of them as camouflage as they advance up Dunsinane Hill. Great Burnham Wood will be marching soon. At the castle, Macbeth is ready to fight when he hears a woman scream. He sends his servant to investigate. He returns with news that the queen is dead. Macbeth is startled, but instead of mourning for his wife, he comments on how meaningless all life is. Before he can head for battle, a servant tells him that Burnham Wood is marching on the castle. Macbeth is shocked, and then angry at the witch's trickery. Before he heads out to battle, he feels something he hadn't felt up until now: fear. Malcolm quickly captures the castle. Macbeth's men put up very little fight before surrendering, but they have not yet found Macbeth himself. That will be up to Macduff, as he means to avenge his family. Macduff finally corners Macbeth, but Macbeth is not afraid. They fight, but Macbeth continues to mock Macduff, telling him that his efforts are meaningless, as no man born of woman can hurt him. Macduff screams back that he was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. Macbeth stops fighting. He realizes now that the witches had deceived him yet again. He knows he will lose this fight, so he simply refuses to fight it. Macduff is an honorable man and will not kill someone in cold blood, but Macduff needs this. Now he taunts Macbeth, telling him he will be marked as a coward by all of Scotland if he does not raise his sword and fight. Macbeth finally gives in, raises his sword, and charges at Macduff. Macduff kills Macbeth and cuts off his head. The king is dead. Long live Malcolm, King of Scotland.